Yeah.
Good morning, friends. Good morning. Happy Sunday. So we're going to start with a message from the book Our Daily Bread by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. The message is number 135, titled Necessary Renewal. Do not quench the spirit. Paul 1 to the Thessalonians, chapter 5, verses 19. When the apostles of the Gentiles wrote this exhortation, he did not mean that the spirit could not be destroyed. Instead, he was trying to renew the mental attitude of those who were suffocating their higher spiritual tendencies. We often see people who go against their own conscience in order to avoid being labeled as spiritual. Nevertheless, incarnate souls are placed in the laborious learning experience in order to rise from the world as glorified spirits. This is the highest purpose of the human school. However, humans are still a long way from a great truth. They habitually prefer strict conventionalism, and only at much cost they open their understanding to the realities of the soul. Actually, customs are powerful determining elements in the evolutionary process, but only when inspired by principles of a higher order. Therefore, we must not suffocate the seeds of the spiritually constructive life that sprout daily in our hearts under the influence of the merciful Father. There are brothers and sisters who leave the earth through the same door of ignorance and indifference that they enter it. Thus, as disciples look back on the activities of each day, they should ask themselves, what have I accomplished? Have I accentuated the traits of the inferior individual of yesterday? Or have I developed the lofty spiritual qualities that I want to retain tomorrow? Friends, this message today is reminding us that we are here to renew ourselves and that each day we have an opportunity, as Emmanuel says at the end, to ask ourselves, do we just reincur in our old selves, in our old traits? Or have we selected on today to really work in the spiritual qualities? Not in the passing things of life, but what it really stay with us once we are asked to go back to our home, which we know is not here, is in the spiritual realm. So he's reminding us of the necessary to renew ourselves each and every day.
So let us pray together. Thank you. Let us feel the loving presence of the good spirits who are here with us. Let us feel the presence of the spirit doctors, nurses, and therapists who kindly reward us for choosing to be here. They are loving teachers of the beyond. Thank you, dear mentors of the Spiritist Society of Virginia and Cardiac Radio, for embracing us with your wisdom and your patience with us. We rejoice in this long weekend, this holiday of Thanksgiving, and the vibrations of gratitude. May we simply focus on gratitude and be grateful for the good and the bad, knowing that the bad are blessings in disguise. We visualize healing baskets being delivered to those who have their names in the book of prayer, reaching each heart with remedies for the body and the soul, for their families. Trusting the good always, as we keep ourselves focused on learning, loving, and serving, learning to love. May we open our hearts to deep understanding and forgiveness for our own good, and connecting with the beautiful currents of construction, the mental currents of construction that are all about the good and only the good. Feeling the sweet and kind invitation for this therapeutic meeting, we thank you for protecting us, guiding all of us, as you grant us the permission to begin it. And so be it. All right, so Miss Daisy, Miss Carol, I have a beautiful thing to show to you guys. You're gonna love it. I just give a hint. It's something ninja related. What can a ninja do today? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's something about a ninja. All right. For us, the ninjas are the good spirits. They are the ones who come to our rescue. Right? And today we're studying our chapter is 18. Yes, collective expiations. Let's talk about collective expiations here. What are they before we begin, right? It's when a group of people go through the same trial. It's like when we go to school and everybody takes the same exam. Why? Why do we go to school and take the same exam, Rajani, since you're a teacher?
It is the teacher to correct.
But why? For example, let's say fifth graders, they are taking the same exam because they are
And that same level of knowledge.
at the same level, and they are taking an exam for things they were taught. So there is a common ground here. All of us here are on earth. We're experiencing similar trials, very similar. And now with the pandemic, we're all the same, right? Today, this chapter has everything to do with the pandemic as well, because it's our collective expiation. We recognize, is the pandemic a collective expiation? Is it? Yes. Because we're going through the same experiences. We all need to do masks, take vaccines, take measures, or not, go through the bumps of being freer and then restricted again. New variants come and the journalists don't have any good news, so they start sharing the news. Another scary variant. Well, variants will keep coming. There are 40 plus variants, and it's another one. It's just life. Doesn't mean we shouldn't take precautions, but we need to be careful with fear. And that's the topic today. Fear. Fear is very difficult. In this chapter, we see Andre Luiz. Let's see as if we're projecting here a movie. The scene is the following. Andre Luiz, Hilario are talking to Silas, the assistant. And they are talking about a number of issues, and then suddenly the director of the institute, Druso, calls them up and calls them to his private office. The director goes straight to the point. It's interesting how Andre Luiz describes this, because it seems like a simple narration, but we can't forget that Spiritist books are educational from beginning to end, from the title to the last dot. So he's showing to us that the more we evolved, the more objective we are, the less we waste time. And he says there is an urgent appeal because there was a plane crash on Earth. And the spirits who are in charge called them in their institute to be some of the spirits to come and help rescuing of 14 passengers who died. Only a few will be rescued, only part of it, not all. He says that some of them needed to be rescued. And of course, we are like scratching our heads like Hilario and Andre Luiz saying, uh-oh, what's happening here? So they are talking about it, and certainly Hilario speaks first and wants to understand why only removing 6 of the 14. And this is where the information that is important for us comes to place. Why? But 14 died, only 6 will be rescued by us. And they hear the following explanation. Help, Druso is explaining, firmly but serenely. Help at the plane crash is given indiscriminately. So everybody is actually receiving help. But we must remember that even though the disaster is the same for all who have died, death is different for each one of them. So in a hospital, people dying of COVID. The one who is dying here died of COVID, and the neighbor did too. But the way they discarnated is different. How so? For the time being, only those whose inner life guarantees their immediate deliverance will be removed from their bodies. So the body died, but the discarnation hasn't happened. So friends, when somebody's body dies, because the person doesn't die, somebody's body dies. Someone's body dies. They haven't discarnated yet. How do we know? We don't know. So we the spiritists, if anybody whom we know discarnates, dies, the physical body dies, remember, what if the discarnation hasn't happened? What can I do to help? Because we may complicate. Who is ready to be discarnated? Those whose inner life guarantees it. So what do I need to do to guarantee that when my body dies, I'm ready to discarnate? That's what we're going to learn. We need to prepare. As for the others whose present situation does not guarantee a quick separation from the physical armor, they will stay attached to their remains for a longer amount of time. The book Heaven and Hell by Kardec explains that in detail. So we're going to pause a second and just recall the Heaven and Hell book and Kardec's explanation. He says to us, we are spirits enveloped by the spiritual body. The spiritual body is connected multidimensionally. Think about 3D, 4D, how many Ds we want. Connected to the physical body, right? Molecule by molecule. When this body dies, the molecules, the connections to the perispirit need to detach fully. That's why we need spiritual help. Think about the umbilical cord when a baby is born. When we discarnate, we still need to cut the silver cord. And that is made by specialists in the spiritual realm. Let's say obstetricians of the spiritual realm. But what dictates how easy we're going to detach? Kardec in the book Heaven and Hell explains to us that as attached as we are to material life, the bonds between the perispirit and the physical body become too strong, too heavy, too dense, making it more difficult to detach. So if now we were going through Thanksgiving during the pandemic, and on Black Friday, we were just thinking about shopping. Not because we need anything, because sometimes we need, but not always. We are just making our connections with the physical body dense, because our perispirit is becoming dense. When we are attached to things, to people, to situations, like people like, oh, I am Brazilian and I pride myself in being Brazilian or American, or this is attachment too of nationality. We've been born and reborn yet again in many countries in this world. There's no reason for us to be, I pride myself to be, yeah, I am happy to be American and to be Brazilian, but that doesn't define me. It doesn't restrict me, because I'm much more than citizen of any country. These attachments, they make our connections too heavy. One thing is to serve our country, our family. Another is to be attached, to be deeply attached to things, to our homes. Some people are so attached to their little things that they have, like, let's say, this little clip, and they keep the clip. And you ask, why you're keeping the clip? Oh, because it's cute. But are you using it? No, I never use it. So why don't you give it to somebody who will use it? Because I like the clip. And then you're just keeping the clip. And that makes our lives very complicated to discarnate. Attachment to material things, to people, to the circumstances of this life, make it very, very difficult. Okay, what else? Okay, so let's go deeper now. Mentor Druso. For how long are they going to be attached to the physical body? And that's not only for those who die in a plane crash. Could be dying at home. My body could be dying in the hospital, in the street. How long am I going to be attached to this body if I don't discarnate immediately? How long? It all depends, says Mentor Druso, it all depends on the degree of animalization of the fluids that are holding their spirits to their body. As we said, how dense is it? Some will remain there for a few hours. Others for several days, perhaps. Who knows? A lifeless body does not always mean that the soul has been set free. So next time somebody says somebody dies, pray. Pray, 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 pray. Don't talk about, how did it happen? But how was it? We're not going to help anybody. Pray silent of the mind and the heart and prayers and saying it was the design of God. Because I know people who come and say, but I think my dad would have survived if the doctor. No, God doesn't make a mistake. If your loved one discarnated, they discarnated. They died. Even when crimes happen, it's not by mistake. I mean, the mistake of the person who did, but the one who suffered, it's not by mistake. But I think on that day, if they haven't done this, if we didn't do, we're just lingering on things, complicating for the person who's discarnated. Why? God knows why. I don't know why, but I will know one day. And that curiosity, that stubbornness in us is something that we're going to learn today with Andre Luiz. He's going to talk about it when he wants to know more and why he's refrained from being in the very place of the plane crash. The kind of life, now, this is the most important part for all of us here. Rewarded for being together. We're going to get to know something that can be life-changing. The kind of life we nourish. If it is a cardiac rate, will be great. The kind of life we nourish in the physical realm determines the true conditions of our death. So if I spend my life resentful, greedy, unforgiving, oh man, when the body dies, it's possible that I feel the whole 9 yards for a while. We think we are punishing people by not forgiving and understanding them. This morning, a scholar said in a podcast I heard, when we're resented, we're punishing ourselves. And Emmanuel, in the book Laws of Love, he says that resentment, 5 things that make our lives miserable. Resentment, well, in Portuguese, 2 words that in English are only 1. So in English is only 4. Good for us. It's like resentment and resentment. Let's say twice. Irritation, desperation. Desperation, irritation, resentment. They create for us zones, lesions, he says, this word, lesions in the spiritual body, that will, if we don't reverse it in time, will degenerate in diseases and even death. So if we keep resentment in our hearts, we are walking closer to disaster. Not for the one that possibly hurt us, for ourselves. That's why the end of chapter 7 of the book Laws of Love, when we talk about the therapeutics of Spiritism, Emmanuel says that doing the good and forgiving are the best remedies for us. Forgiving. We can be as stubborn as we want. But Andre Luiz is sharing with us, me introduce those words. If we live a life like that, always battling in irritation, always in resentments, in despair, a problem happened and we make it like a big deal, we're just going to have a very difficult discarnation and the afterlife. He says, the more we wallow in the currents of lower illusions, the more time we will need to exhaust all the vital energies that bind us up to the heavy, primitive matter that comprises our physiological instrumentation as we flounder around in the lower mental creations to which we have become accustomed, finding in them the fuel for extensive wrongs in the darkness of the corporeal realm. The more we submit ourselves to the disciplines of the spirit, which recommend balance and sublimation, the easier it will be for us to leave the flesh as the result of any emergencies that we cannot avoid due to debts contracted before the law. Thus, physical death is not a synonym for physical emancipation. So RIP, rest in peace, doesn't exist. So we spiritists, when somebody says, oh, my friend, my family died, don't say rest in peace, may they rest in peace, because that's not true. That's not true. We're not going to tell them the whole 9 yards because we don't know. We say, count on my prayers, count on my support. Prayers for the one who departed, prayers for the family, help if you need help. But we're not going to be talking about things we don't believe. Rest in peace. Where do we rest in peace? None of this book talk about rest in peace. Because the more evolved don't rest, they continue working. So who is going to rest? Nobody's going to rest in peace. So the question for us today is this: are we sublimating? He talks about the disciplines of the spirit. It's about spiritual intelligence. To give a boost, he says balance and sublimation. Balance is about avoiding extremes. I remember a very wise homeopathic doctor saying, Vanessa, we need to avoid extremes to be healthy. He says our society is filled with these extreme words. Never, always. In nature, never doesn't exist and always doesn't either. Look at the seasons. Always blooming doesn't exist. There's a season. There's a beginning. There's an end. There's a continuity. There's a flow. That's where balance comes. So he said, disease comes when we're not allowing the easiness of life, like the flow coming through. So it's a lesson for us, as Mentor Drews was saying, balance, the flow. And he was so cute when he said, think about the music, row, row, row your boat. So row, row, row. So it's like you have a rhythm. And I remember Virginia was a baby, a homeopathic doctor in Brazil saying, we need rhythm to be healthy. Rhythm. When we are in extremes, it's out of rhythm. So we need rhythm. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Gentle. And Jesus said to us that his invitation for us is gentle and it's soft. Nothing with Jesus is abrupt and aggressive and impositional. Jesus is not like this. He's not a master, a ninja master, right? With abrupt moves. That's where sublimation comes in. These instincts in us that we need to sublimate. It's spiritual intelligence. It's like we become coaches of ourselves. The good spirits are saying. When I'm gonna feel anger, hey, hold your horses, huh? Breathe. Hey, take it easy. Why going there is just going to create this peak of imbalance. I need to stay in balance. Desperation, oh my gosh. Nothing. Now that I was planning a trip to Europe, Europe is closing the doors again, and a new virus is coming. Why are you gonna despair? Do you need that to survive? It's just a trip, right? It's just vacation, and you're going to be upset and in despair because, wow, so materialistic of us. To gently emancipate, discarnate, we need to live a life that is a little more gentle. And help our family members find a balance. And that's sublimation. The other day, I saw a kid. And the kid was 6. The mother said, "Put your cup on the sink." He screamed at the mom saying, "You do it." And I was like, oh my gosh, how can we help this mom? Because this child cannot grow up this way. It's not only because of the mom, it's because of him. If you're 6 and you think you can kick and scream and people are going to do what you want, you'll be in trouble, man. You can't go on like this. So I was telling her about the importance of frustrating our kids in their impulses, because children are like this. They say things, they don't have the leash of their emotions at hand, because their areas of discernment are not evolved yet, mature. So it's understandable they have sometimes bursts, but we spiritists know it comes from previous lives. It comes sometimes because they are feeling the presence of spirits. However we want to explain it, it's time to educate. Not by lecturing, by loving, by looking at them in the eye, by pausing, reminding them that they are doing something for themselves. We can save a lot of future marriages if we educate our children wisely today. Because a lot of the marriages nowadays collapse because our parents did not educate us well. They fed our pride, our egotism. Because a parent who is wise will know better how to teach their children not to be so narcissistic and self-centered. But some parents enjoy when they see their children growing up and earning a lot of money, because they're going to get a lot of things too. And they don't care if their children are kicking and screaming at people, being a big child in tantrums, because, well, they're getting, right, the gifts, the things. And that's why many parents, as we're going to see here, they suffer when their children go through their own trials, because they are the ones who push them to the abyss of those crimes. Okay, we are not in the collective trial yet. So now they say, but, okay, the other victims will be assisted at their time. And at some point, they say, we want to participate and go there with you, Druzo. And Mentor Joseph say you can't. To Andre Luiz and Hilario. But we're just gonna go there to report. They say you can't. Why? Why? Now, another lesson for us. A lesson for us that he says here. He says, you must realize that you are collecting educational material involving the awakening of our incarnate brothers and sisters, almost all of whom are undergoing an important stage of their struggle to pay their debts to divine justice. If you were to analyze the trials, the expiations of this kind, you, Andre Luiz, would inevitably, and Hilario, inevitably be compelled to examine in detail situations and problems that could create destructive images in the minds of many of those you intend to help. Half smiling, revealing the humility that adorned his admirable spirit, Druso added, I don't think we could comment on a large disaster in the human realm without imparting the virus of fear, so often the bearer of discouragement and death. Fear is very problematic, and we are living the pandemic. It's all about fear. Now that we thought, and then you read the news, and oh my gosh, is this gonna come? And then you hear this news and that news, and people vaccinated, getting sick, and oh my gosh, what do? We don't go there. When people start talking about it, what do we know to say? Nothing. Not even the journalists, they know. Even the scientists don't know. So what do? We don't. It's just like, oh, well, it's going to pass, right? Do you believe this is going to pass? Of course it will. This is not the first pandemic on earth. All the books by Emmanuel from 2,000 years ago to Paul and Stephen, Renunciation, Hail Christ, 50 years later, each one of them talk about pandemics all the time. Every couple times, humanity on earth is going through this. But how did we experience those times in previous lives? I don't know. But when I open the book Renunciation by Emmanuel, I see how Beatrice in the book, it's just a teaser for those who read again, or who haven't read to read the book. Fantastic book. Beatrice, she used the pandemic for her personal advantage in a very criminal way. If Beatrice is living today during COVID, what's going to happen to her? She's going to undergo this pandemic in a very particular way. And that's the topic we're learning here. How have we experienced the pandemic? Look at the book 2,000 years ago. When people were suffering from leper, contagious, they didn't have a solution to the problem. How did Fulvia behave before that problem with Flavia? She discriminated her. She despised Flavia. She put her down and the parents. So if Fulvia is living today during COVID, how is she going to go through COVID? It's going to be hard. At some point, we need to come to terms with our own guilty conscience. And that's the very topic of today. Why do we go through trials? Because we need to learn the lesson. Which lesson? Well, here it is. They insist. They say, but Mentor Druso, can you please just, since we're not going to go there to see why they experienced the plane crash, can you tell us a case or two why people go through this? Why? And now the case. 30 years ago, he says, I enjoyed the company of two selfless benefactors to whom I owe a lot of at this shelter of light, Ascanio and Lucas, two highly respected assistants in the spheres higher than this one. They were part of a team of beloved mentors. When I first met them, they had already spent many years helping suffering brothers and sisters. Enlightened and kind, they were tireless workers in our best endeavors. However, after decades of struggle in the battles of sanctifying fraternity, they longed to be admitted to the higher realms so they could develop their ideals of sanctity and beauty. But they didn't display the conditions needed for the flight. Since they were completely absorbed in the enthusiasm of teaching the pathway of the good to others, they hadn't even thought of delving into their own past. It just so happens that quite often, while enthralled with the splendors of the summit, we're not always inclined to examine ourselves in the midst of the valley. Accordingly, they began to ardently desire ascension, but they felt somewhat disappointed by the lack of support from the authorities, who failed to acknowledge the merit they needed. So, they were helping, they wanted to learn in higher places, but they wouldn't be allowed. Why? Well, the thing is this, they were allowed to go back and see the chart of previous lives. Not all, few. And they saw that in the last 5 reincarnations, they were doing well. But then, when they reached the 15th century, imagine us, going back. Yeah, good. Almost good. Well, yeah. And then we go back and back in our own history, and then, oh my Lord, this is the story of our lives. 15th century. Something emerged that brought back a painful memory. Wounding them deeply in their spirits, the magnetic procedure, they did a procedure in the spiritual realm to go back in time, and scenes of a dreadful crime committed by both in 1429. Soon after the liberation of the Orleans, when they were members of Joan of Arc's army. Eager for influence before their brothers in arms, they didn't hesitate to murder 2 fellow soldiers. While in the territory of Gatineau, they pushed them off the top of a fortress into the filthy moat, thus feeling exhilarated by the honors that later would bring them awful remorse after the grave. At this point of the disquieting investigation, due to the respect they inspired, they were asked by the competent authorities if they wanted to continue the probe. They both declined. They said, oh no, this is the movie of my life is already very spicy. Thank you, but no thank you, no more. Preferring to pay off their debt before delving into any further into the depositories of the unconscious. Instead of continuing to insist on ascending to higher levels, they asked to return to the physical realm where they have just recently finished paying off their debts. And then Lilario is asking what we are asking. How? Due to their inner moral resources they have accumulated, they were able to choose their trial. So they chose. And so they opted for careers in the field of aviation, to be plane pilots. offering their lives to its development. 2 months ago, they returned to our plane of service after having suffered the same mortal fall they had inflicted on their companions back in the 15th century. Did you visit them while they were preparing for their latest reincarnation? Yes, that's Andre Luiz' question. And Druso said, yes. I met them several times before their departure. They were associated with a large community of spirit friends in the department specializing in reincarnation. And he shows to us those who have already had a lot of mortal credits, they, like in the case of two, they were easy to discarnate, but some other people were not. Well, this story goes on and on. But what is important for us here? The mercy of God is great. They committed a crime, but because between then and now, they did the good, they helped people, they really served, they accumulated credits to reincarnate, choose their trial, and discarnate in a tragic way. But they discarnated in a tragic way, but didn't inflict any pain on anybody. Remember last week? How do we know if my death is ending? When I do not cause more pain onto others. The other day, a woman who has 2 kids, young kids, her husband of 38 years old died of a heart attack. Just like that. Unexpectedly. How come? They were a happy family. They were a couple who really loved each other. The father was a good dad. How come? How come? He was 38. We don't know. But this tells us. Died not of COVID, but at the same time that the pandemic started. It's the collective expiation. How many of us departed without preparation? Just like that. You get sick, go to the hospital, don't come back. You don't come back. And we're so naive and ignorant, to say the least, and we think we're going to live forever and tomorrow we're going to do the good, but today I'm going to be angry and upset and stubborn and this. No, don't, because this may be your last day and you don't know. And only God knows. So first of all, this lesson is calling us for a new attitude during this pandemic. If we keep going home, like many people on earth, dreaming of not using masks, dreaming of doing gatherings, of traveling, going back to our crazy lives, we spiritists should know better that during this pandemic we need more than ever to roll our sleeves and help more, think less of ourselves, complain less, do not victimize ourselves at all, and say, I need to help more. I need to assist more. I need to pray more. I need to get out of my comfort. Because there are many people who don't know what we know and they really don't know what to do. What is our attitude during this collective expiation? How many of us had loved ones who departed during this pandemic? How are we helping those who are experiencing the same but don't know what we know? If I get sick, do I have a different attitude? Like when I had COVID in April, and Mentor Joseph said, there are people who have COVID like you, and they don't know what you know. So you better just keep going. Because they don't know. They can cry and complain. You know, you need to keep helping. And stay put. Don't stop anything. Because there are people who don't know. But we here, we know. We need to have a different attitude. When we go back to the book 2,000 years ago, we need to ask ourselves how close we are. If we have two parameters here, Publius Lentulus the senator and Livia, his wife, are we still close to the attitude of Publius the senator, who is selfish, egotistic, demanding, and angry, and this? Or are we more sublimated, imbalanced like Livia? Because that was 2,000 years ago. And if in the 21st century we're still cherishing that imbalanced attitude, animalistic attitude before our loved ones, and before people, we are asking for a bigger shake-up. The pandemic is not enough. No wonder the variants are still growing. Because we haven't learned. We, not they, we. It's not South Africa. It's not Europe. It's all of us. Am I contributing to the collective psychosphere during this collective expiation of the pandemic? Or am I one of the people who are still feeding materialism by my crazy shopping, my dreams of material things, and I'm thinking of traveling and this, and sometimes we give excuses, right? I want to travel because I want to see my family. It's not true. It's not true. We don't care. It's just an excuse. Because you can love your family at where you are. You don't need to be there in person. Because many times in person we complicate even more. It's because of us. Because we want the easy life. And that keeps us very, very, very heavy. Andre Luiz is sharing with us profound awareness of all these chapters in the book. This is the most meaningful for us during this pandemic. It's a chapter to read, reread, pay attention to the very explanations of Mentor Drews and Andre Luiz, and see what we can do. And rid ourselves of fear, no desperation. We trust in God and we know everything shall pass. This pandemic will pass. The problem is, am I going to grow more mature? It's a growth mindset. It's not only for kids. It's for all of us. Have I grown or not? John.
I couldn't help thinking when you were mentioning the suffering well, not passing our pain on to somebody else. All I could think of was Selena Shepherd. When she
Selenia Shepherd.
She contracted cancer, and she kept coming to this woman to serve.
Oh, yeah.
And every time I get a little bit upset or start feeling a little bit bad, I think of her and what she did. And it just stimulates us to continue on because she was a wonderful woman.
Thank you. So for those who are here online, our dear friend John De Rosa is telling about Selenia Shepherd, a friend of ours who lived in Pennsylvania and used to come even to Virginia. She would come all the way with the family. Cancer, no cancer. She would come. Sometimes she would do chemotherapy today, tomorrow, she would be at the SSB. Not because we say you have to come or else, because she wanted. I was always surprised. I was like, can't believe you're here. She was always smiling. And she would bring her whole family, all the children. And she never came to complain about anything. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But since you reminded me, I will never forget. On the day of her death, when we were visiting her in the hospice, the whole family was around. Steve Shepherd had his guitar. His youngest son, I think she had like 5 children and already grandchildren back then. They had the guitars because they used to sing all the songs that we sing with our kids. They used to sing. And she was already unconscious, laying down, almost discarnating. Everybody was smiling. They loved her deeply. She was a wonderful mom, a wonderful wife. And she was smiling, though unconscious. I couldn't help but to smile. I looked at Steve Shepard and I said, Selenia is teaching us a lesson without words. And the good spirits were surrounding all of us. They were even singing, the children, her children, they were singing for her. They understood that life didn't stop there. And do they miss her? Of course. But of course her discarnation was easy. Because she lived a life with love, resignation, surrender, calm, no complaints, no desperation, and very simple. On Monday, talking about simplicity, in our meeting, we had the loving spirit connected to Mother Mary's team, who delivered a very sweet message to all of us in our community, saying that Mother Mary asks all of us to remind ourselves that her life was very simple. And as the Spirit was explaining, they were showing like a movie of her house, her everyday actions, the simplicity of every day, and how she surrendered to simple and small. And that was the main message, to help us stay simple and small in our daily things. Because we live in a part of the country where we tend to be pushed to dream huge homes, big cars, big salaries, big trips, big everything. It's the opposite of what God is calling us. And one of the most elevated spirits in this planet, Mother Mary, lived a very simple life, asking us to keep our lives simple, small. Let us stay with this as we prepare ourselves to receive the passes now. The good spirits, they want to help us. Let us close our eyes. We're going to put the virtual passes. Do you guys like the virtual passes? The one that we play here? You guys like it? There is the voice of the man and the woman. Is there a preference? Is there a preference? The male or the female?
I never heard it.
Yeah?
Never heard it?
Yeah? You like that?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so there you go. We are going to listen to it in the female. Okay? Let us prepare ourselves. I'll put the image just for our own experience, and I'm going to share here with the friends. There you go. Oh, I forgot to share the sound. Sorry. Okay.
Welcome to the Virtual Passes Room. Emmanuel, the spirit mentor of Chico Xavier, once stated that thought is life. Thus, we can create the healing mental state right here and now. In preparation for the virtual passes, we would kindly recommend the following. Be certain that you have a real need to receive passes. Do not use the room simply out of curiosity. Casual visits to the room will negate its future benefits when needed. When using the room, have gratitude and show respect as you would when visiting a physical spiritist center. During the passes, silently evoke God's protection as well as Jesus. Also pray to your guardian angel. Concentrate on positive thoughts, thereby avoiding negative ones. Breathe deeply, slowly, calmly, and confidently. Always be ready to pray. Let us begin this passes session by praying as our guide and model Jesus Christ has taught us. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now let us feel that small points of suffering, bitterness, sadness, anger, deception disappear from your mind, not to return. Like aged leaves that are shed from trees, let go of those feelings no longer serve you, and gently, but most assuredly, discard them. Let the wind of life carry them so far away that they are unable to return and create their negative link. Little by little, your emotional tree sheds its negative feelings, becoming clean and ready for its renovation. Without the weight of those dead leaves, you feel lighter and you're able to feel the gentle water of life now abundantly falling onto your physical body, spiritual body, and soul. This water cleans, disinfects, purifies, deconstructs, and tones all the cells of your body. Nothing can escape its renewing action. At the same time, it is cleaning and moisturizing your body. This crystalline liquid satiates your spirit, eliminating affliction, anxiety, and unrest. Now, within your heart, resides a sense of calmness, cleanness, and well-being. Then, the light of God emerges to warm and snuggle you, while carrying rays penetrate your whole body and tenderly embrace you like a maternal hug, which brings comfort and safety to your heart. At this moment, great love warms your heart and removes the coldness resulting from any affliction. Now, your mind contains only feelings of joy and confidence. You are at peace and enveloped by a protective warmth. The heart of life offers you perfumed flowers. Then, with grateful and happy soul, you gather their colorful petals that penetrate your whole being, restoring feelings and emotions of happiness, hope, faith, courage, and determination, helping you to regain the willingness to live. In addition to the perfume and color, nature also shares with you the best it has to offer, an infinite capacity for restoring its sublime beauty, even when struck by evil that appears to enact its end. Divine hands full of light gently overflow and spill all over you like a golden waterfall of unspeakable and unknown essence. Little by little, your soul is impregnated with sweet happiness, allowing an inner renewal of the most noble and elevated purposes that are of progress and accomplishment. Showered by this sublime power, you deeply surrender to the donor of light, absorbing energy that now gives your life a new and blessed impulse. You called me, and here I am. What do you want from me today? What do you need? Ask, my son. Ask, my daughter. I am here to help. Now, ask your special request to Jesus, enumerating the problems and difficulties that afflict you. I listen to your request with love and attention. Now I count on your faith and trust in me to solve your problems. Go in peace. I am watching over you, and I will not lose sight of you. Believe in God and also believe in me. I will be with you every day until the end. Be happy. Many blessings.
All right. So we want to thank our friends over here at the internet. See you next time.